everybody. I'm Gary Parker with PG&E, Pacific Gas and Electric. I am a estimating supervisor. My main role is I oversee QC and product development for estimating to Brian to kind of help you out here. So when we use the term estimator for us, it is the folks that go out into the field, they field things, they come back to the office, do the design, go all the way through costing, everything, help the crews as needed. So a lot of product development with SBS and other tools for the estimators, and then, like I said, oversee a lot of the QC to ensure we're getting standardized designs and things like that. So that's my role, and this is my second year at the PUG.
Jason Evans. I'm a principal program manager for innovation, really focused around technology and design for the underground or electric distribution underground program. I worked with the company for about 12 years. Actually, we got hired the same day. And I have very similar backgrounds. I also was a supervisor for estimating, and then also was an estimator myself. And we used to review designs both in the gas space and the electric space. So, I think that's about it. Go ahead.
All right. Pat wanted me to give a quick overview of PG&E. I think most will probably know who we are. So PG&E formed in 1905, dates back through the 1850s. We obviously acquired a bunch of other companies and grew from there. Our service area is 70,000 square miles. We serve roughly 16 million Californians and have about 28,000 employees. As far as our system goes, we have 106,681 miles of electric distribution lines, 18,466 miles of transmission, 42,141 miles of distribution gas, and 6,438 of gas transmission. Then you can see off to the side, we spend a lot of money doing a lot of maintenance work, a lot of capacity, reliability. We're always working on that. So to jump more into the engineering space, so throughout the service territory, we have 13 offices. We have 13 offices for our internal electric distribution side. That encompasses the majority of the 986 electric distribution estimators. For electric transmission, we have 135 estimators. Gas distribution, 192, and gas transmission, 34. So we have a pretty large staff of just estimators. Once again, they're the ones that are doing the design, the costing, going out in the field, doing all that fun stuff. Sorry, skipped it. There we are. As far as the work that we do, this is just pretty much electric distribution was 427 miles last year. Out of that, roughly 400 miles of it was electric distribution hardening underground. The other 27 miles will account for subdivision work, Rule 20s, things like that. But the 400 miles was really one of our biggest achievements over the last couple of years since we have got into the electric distribution hardening underground. To put it kind of in comparison, if you go back campfire, the fire rebuilds, things like that, historically, we would do about 1 to 2 miles of electric distribution only as far as hardening goes. So when we decided to come out and say, hey, we're going to do 10,000 miles, we have obviously greatly ramped that up from a couple miles to 400 miles from there. Then as far as overhead, last year we did 46 miles of design for overhead hardening as well. This year we're on track, so far we've done 401 miles of underground, 61 miles of overhead hardening. I think our goal is 450 for underground and 75 for overhead hardening. So we still have a little ways to go, but there's still time left in the year. Over to you.
So a little bit about commonly used programs within our estimating departments, not probably dissimilar to the majority of you, but we're using AutoCAD MAP 2021 right now for drafting. SAP is our work management system. OCalc we use for our pole loading calculations. And then we are in Esri House for GIS. And then we have a tool called EES, which was a home designed and built front end for SAP, which is what we do all of our cost estimating in. And then, of course, we have Excel. Everyone probably uses Excel here for something, but we use that for a lot of our engineering calculations. So this is kind of just an overview of what current state PG&E looks like from an ecosystem standpoint, technology-wise, and the handoffs. So this is a very manual process, right, from end to end. And I think that's the same story I've heard from a lot of people in this room, where we're creating, right now our planning department is interacting with 9 different tools. We're creating artifacts from 9 different tools. And they're creating the delivery system of like 16 to 17 different documents of different file types. And then that is what we're supposed to be consuming in the design department, right? And AutoCAD is then, what we use for a design tool. So we're trying to translate everything out of these documents. We're using AutoCAD to actually do our design. And then we're creating PDFs and we're handing those physically to construction. And then, of course, they're doing their manual inputs. All of this, manual uploads to SAP, and then, of course, manual delivery to mapping, and then manual input into our GIS. So this is kind of where we're trying to go, and how AUD kind of supports that ecosystem. So we're trying to get, AUD, of course, is, digital design and modeling. And the idea is, well, in our implementation right now, what we're doing is we're importing data, existing facility information from GIS into AUD, and then, of course, generating models out of these, and then creating new proposed models. Now, future state, what we'd also like to do is bring in future planned asset installations as well. I haven't told this to Chuck yet. I don't see him, but and then also enable Playback Manager in the future to then upload our proposed designs for mobile house building. And also, we have unique requirements for the CPUC to actually report out at different intervals certain GIS-based information, which Playback Manager would solve that as a problem, which we can't currently do today. Well, without having to create something completely manual outside of that. So kind of a graphic works design background for us, at PG&E. We started with some graphic work design type concept design tools as far back as the 80s. Then we launched something in 2009, which wasn't well trained or implemented as far as a delivery to the designers. And then in 2018, we were actually met with SBS, and we were planned a rollout of AUD about 7 days before the Camp Fire happened, which is probably one of the largest fires we've ever seen within PG&E. And then, of course, a series of fires after that. And then in 2021 was the next largest fire, Dixie Fire, which devastated our territory. And our CEO came out and said that we're going to plan to underground 10,000 miles in 10 years. And that was when we decided, hey, we really need to do things differently and more efficiently. Let's go back and talk to SBS and AUD again. Let's get that back on the work plan. And now here we are. We did plan on doing a video.
Hello, my name is Yana Kovalenko. I am an estimator on the central design team based out of Fresno, California. Recently, I partnered with Spatial Business Systems to test the automated utility design tool, more commonly referred to as AUD. AUD is a 3D modeling tool and a plug-in to the AutoCAD design application we use today. It automates and standardizes our design process by providing a common digital interface and applying validation rules to prevent user error. I had the chance to test the tool and would like to share some of its key benefits and features with you that are currently in development. The biggest value of AUD is a streamlined approach to updating materials and equipment associated with the design. Today, estimators tabulate required materials through a combination of EES, DEB, spreadsheets, standards, and manual calculations. If there is a change in materials, estimators must make manual updates across several systems, a time-consuming and tedious task, especially when working on multiple location designs. In AUD, anytime facilities are modified, material is automatically added or removed from the design, saving time and ensuring a complete and accurate selection of materials and equipment. In future development, this tool would sync with EES to automate much of the manual data entry estimators do today. The next AUD feature worth highlighting is the drawing type automation that enables estimators to create all-in-one drawings. What we mean by that is you can create a civil-focused construction drawing and electric-focused schematic drawing all in one simply by stylizing the output. Right now, estimators must create separate drawings such as key sketches, construction drawings. In doing so, when a change occurs, the estimators need to make sure the update translates through the rest of the drawings. The multiple entry process across separate drawings creates a lot of room for error. AUD looks to automate some of this process by applying different stylizations to the same drawing for each type of deliverable. Another feature worth sharing is AUD has values such as wire sizes, lengths, and load integrated to its system, which allows the accurate and automatic calculation of voltage drop flicker. Estimators will no longer have to calculate this value in Excel. AUD also automates cable pulling calculations, another value estimators currently obtain through Excel and must input into multiple files. To add complexity, the number of files depend on the amount of cable runs that exist within the project and can amount to dozens for larger projects. When change in circumstance arises, estimators make manual updates to spreadsheets, which can make a time-consuming, inefficient, and error-prone process. When using AUD, pulling calculations get auto-calculated in real time and can account for changes in elevation, something our current spreadsheets cannot do. Now, let's talk about revisions. Minor changes like transformer relocation currently take a significant amount of time to update due to the implied changes to pulling tension and voltage drop flicker. Estimators must recalculate both of these values in Excel and update table in the CAD drawing. What can seem a simple change tends to impact several aspects of the drawing and is done manually. With the use of AUD, most revisions get updated automatically because all the features of the drawing are connected within a model. This design and process saves time and reduces the chance of overlooking a change. AUD also simplifies and streamlines the way we label equipment. Estimators right now know how manual the process is to label every piece of electrical equipment based on equipment specifications and across multiple PDF drawings. In AUD, equipment specifications are pre-configured to models. This design makes it possible for estimators to auto-generate and update labels systematically from a single point of entry. Similarly, AUD can be pre-configured to store generic equipment details in relation to equipment type with relative labels that are automatically derived from the design. Estimators will no longer need to create or modify generic equipment details manually. Last, but certainly not least on my list, is AUD's streamlined approach to location numbering. Location numbering, currently another manual task, is one that impacts several drawings. Right now, any changes estimators make to location numbers can have a cascading impact to the Excel calculation files and the EES estimator structure. In using an integrated AUD at EES, location numbers stay fluid across most associated documentations. This streamlined approach allows for auto-synchronization of location numbers to EES and OCalc, serving up the most up-to-date quality control and compliance data points. I hope you enjoyed this video on the top benefits and features of the automated utility design.
To Jason's point, really the 2021, when they came out and said, hey, we're going to do 10,000 miles, we really had to sit back and look at the way we're doing everything, right? We knew we had to scale quickly. The goal is actually to get to a point to where we're designing and installing 1,000 miles of underground hardening electric distribution every year. Going from, a couple miles a year to 1,000, that's a huge undertaking. So we really took a look at all of our tools, all of our training, experience, everything across the board. Historically, a lot of the electric distribution designs that were done for subdivision work, for Rule 20s, like I said, and that would be married up with like a gas design or a composite or something else, which would be used for the civil construction, for permitting, things like that. So for lack of better words, the distribution estimators didn't really have, the electric guys, they didn't have a lot of knowledge on construction or how a design should look to go to permitting, things like that, or the physical construction itself. So really, we've spent a ton of time trying to kind of look over these different problem statements, figure them out from a technology standpoint, standardization, governance, training, everything across the board. We got somewhat lucky on this one because it was actually before 2021. I think it was somewhere in 2020 where my position was kind of stood up. Hey, let's get some standardization. Let's get some governance. We started creating design templates, things like that, which really led into the next steps, which have made us somewhat successful from there. So this is more of our current state right now. Like I said, standardized training we hold, and it's awesome to hear other companies that are doing this too. We have like a monthly meeting where it's just, here's what changed across the AutoCAD template. Here's different business functions that might have changed, maybe different process flows, things like that. So really just trying to make sure we get the masses out there. Thankfully, this is still somewhat of a smaller scale. We only have about 200 to 300 estimators that are working on the underground design. So it's more of a limited subset. You know, we're not looking at the 1,000 estimators that are doing everything. We're keeping it a little bit more contained right now, which I think as we develop AUD, start the rollout and figure out how that goes, it's going to make that a lot easier. AutoCAD training was another good one. We actually teamed up with I think they help out Pat and SBS to some extent, but it was a good recommendation. And each year we've been sending about 150 estimators through AutoCAD training. Prior to us creating these design templates and everything, if you go back 2 to 3 years, I remember when I first started looking at it, I opened up electric AutoCAD. I was coming from the gas side, and there was 2 layers. There was an overhead and an underground. And I started asking like symbols, who's, messed with symbols? And they go, I don't think anybody's touched them since the 90s. So drafting was still a little bit crude. We definitely had a lot of work to do there. So we spent hours and hours and hours updating AutoCAD and then sending the estimators through training so they understand how to use base maps, how to use annotation, blocks with attribution, things like that. So I think that's been another good step to also gear us up as we transition into AUD, is they already have those good fundamental background of AutoCAD. Knowledge sharing is another good one. Like I said, we have the monthly meetings. We also have set up like a SharePoint site where we house all of our documentation. So our process flows, how-tos, things like that. There's another similar one just for AUD. It's where we house like the video we were going to show, what's upcoming, what's, anticipated releases, what to get ready for, things like that.
So, in the past, standardization wasn't really it wasn't really existent, to be honest. So we didn't have standardized templates. Everything was kind of localized. I mean, we're a pretty large company as far as territory. That's not dissimilar to a lot of people here too, but we have, 7 main shops, right? 13 main shops. So 13 main shops that are all operating under their own set of standards within the shop. And then even within those shops, we have a role called an ADE, which is basically your lead estimator, right? They're the ones reviewing drawings. Each of them would have their own thing that they wanted on a drawing, the way text was displayed, line styles, symbols, whatever. And they all use their own templates. So, and there really wasn't any rules around that. There wasn't anything documented around what standards were, to his point, when he was talking earlier. I mean, that really was just 2 layers that you were drawing on. Pick your color, pick your line style. And we hadn't really touched CAD in about, 10 to 15 years is what it says here, but I think it was actually longer. So what we did is we started with, standardized. Well, actually what we started with was a CAD committee. I mean, we had one, but then we did it formally. We went to all the different stakeholders and we got leadership approval and support and sponsorship. And we set up a committee and we meet regularly. And then that committee also approved and created an actual CAD manual, because we didn't have one for electric distribution. We did for transmission since back in 2013. And then I can't remember when distribution came out for gas, but so we finally actually got a formal approval for an actual set of standards, and then we implemented those standards within CAD. And we created new ribbons, new templates, a singular design template really for major work. And then that was distributed out to these different design centers, and there's a design manual now that we created as well, so that even down to how the annotation looks, it's all standardized. And that's been being trained, to his point, for quite a while now, actually.
All right, so I know I've already kind of covered some of this. I guess really just to drive it home, the biggest thing that we saw was out of those 13 design centers, 900 plus employees, it was all over the board of, we would see a person turn a job into Jason and he would say, nope, I don't want that, do it this other way. It was everything across the board, but as long as it met the standards, right, our design standards or our engineering standards, excuse me, and it was buildable, constructible, the crews could read it, it could be redlined, that's all anybody really cared about. There was also, no expectation. There was no pushback. The supervisors were just kind of, all right, well, this is what this person wants. That's what that person wants. So the trend really kind of created all of these different silos. Another huge one that we realized was, if we have, PG&E, like, once again, huge territory. If we have an estimator way down in Fresno that's working on a job in Santa Rosa, they were typically doing it the way they would do it in Fresno, and there might be different restrictions on depth of cover or a scale on the drawing or things like that. And so it just created a lot of rework across the board. Another one was with all of our different lines of businesses and dependencies. We hadn't set up any of these kind of process flows of getting the estimators out, walking with construction, talking with permitting, talking with the acquisition. Coming from the undergrounding side, easements are just our Achilles heel, and we weren't talking to anybody prior to getting a design done. So a lot of the times the estimators would sit there in kind of their little black hole, work on a job for a couple months, and then hand it off to a bunch of people. You would have the permit rep that would come back and say, no, this doesn't meet the, Santa Rosa requirements. And, someone else would say something, and it was just, we did a lot of rework and we were a big black hole. So the current state, like I said, we stood up the handbook site, gave people a lot of training. We've done road shows. I'm a huge fan of them because my boss is here, so I have to say that. It's a big territory, so you do a lot of driving, but we spent at least a couple days inside each shop explaining the new design templates, explaining what we wanted people to see. Pretty much a half a day of just Q&A. Hey, why were you doing this? Why we're doing it now? And I think that was a huge one. Just with 900 people, there's a lot of perception, and someone will go, you're changing this just because you want to, but when you can sit down and look at them eye to eye and explain the reasoning why, most of the time they're going to buy off on that. A new governance committee was stood up, once again, between all the different lines of businesses for us. So the nice part is we have a 30, 60, 90 phase gate there. So as we get to a 30%, we basically have a rough draft of a design. Then we'll go out, we'll walk it with construction, make sure that the design is actually physically constructible in the field. We go as far as we send survey out and they actually stake our designs. All of our designs are now done on a base map, geo-referenced. So as you're walking it, you can see a stake, and maybe they didn't catch that there was a culvert there or something else. We can adjust that in the field and go from there. In my group, we've actually kind of scaled since this, but I've hired a civil engineer, another engineering assistant, and an electric engineer under my group. So every time a job or a design gets to one of those phase gates, it goes through our review. So we're going through and making sure that it's in the design template, they're using the correct layers, line styles, scaling across the board. The ADE should be looking at it to make sure that it meets our engineering standards. This is really more of just that quality control, whether it's done in Fresno, Santa Rosa, or by contract. We want one product every time.
Yeah, so part of the reason why we're even bringing a lot of this up is if we didn't get ahead of this prior to going into an AUD type of system, and we try to just jump in, we would have completely failed. This type of standardization was like a very, very critical roadmap to even getting to where we are right now. And it's still happening in kind of parallel as far as rollout. And this is actually our schedule right now as far as implementation of AUD itself. We're currently going to be starting UAT Monday, Yeah, Monday. And it's been quite a journey for us. I mean, we started back in 2023 when this was actually coupled with an Yeah, right. Tuesday. That's why you're making that face. Well, I don't know. Maybe we'll start on Monday. But yes, we start on Tuesday, and our current target go live date is in October. So we're very excited. It's been quite a journey. We've had a lot of really heated discussions on the phone, but it's been working out very well. Do you have anything else?
I think more than anything, like Jason alluded to, trying to get that back end, and we still don't have a ton. We're still configuring to some extent, so we don't have a ton to show you. But wanted to give more or less the background on PG&E, kind of what we've come through, to the point of we're moving pretty fast. Our rollout is actually going to be very, very, very small. Like I said, we only have a couple hundred estimators that are doing the underground, and that's what we're focusing now. We kind of, the goal there is, let's get it to where we're at a steady state with all the underground work. Then we'll move it probably into the overhead hardening, then look into other subdivision, other work types, and kind of go from there. But, we've heard from years past of, hey, when you roll out a tool and it's not ready, it's going to tank right off the bat. So that's why we're trying to go with that small subset. And even the initial go live will likely only be a handful of people. From there, huge thanks to Brian at Hydro One. Talked to him a while ago, and kind of he had laid us out of like, hey, maybe look into an SME group and this and that. And so we're really trying to model that same thing of across these 13 offices. All right, let's try and grab a couple people from each one. They'll be the initial, once we know we have a good product, we've done a couple designs, let's get the SMEs in, let's go from there. And that way you have that local area support. The support side on the rest of it, that was another big challenge, was getting our leadership to commit someone from our standards engineers to GIS, SAP, all the different programs of, hey, we're going to need someone that's, not necessarily dedicated, but when we tap them on the shoulder, that they will come help us out as needed. So kind of heard that from a couple other, companies here, and it's nice to hear it's not just us. But no, we're really looking forward to the rollout and just kind of seeing how things go.
Now, I know we're standing between you guys and lunch, so let's open it up for questions.
For the underground modeling you guys do and tying into your GIS system, do you have how do you model your underground data in your GIS, and how are you connecting that, and what challenges are you having with the synchronization between GIS and underground assets?
You'll take it. So we are currently modeling our underground data, but we're actually not currently using playback to actually push that to GIS, right? So we're modeling our underground assets. So is there a specific aspect of that you're curious about?
It's a one-way import at this point.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of the challenge with GIS is a complexity of underground infrastructure. So your conduit, trenches, containment, all those things in GIS modeling aren't as robust as AUD is. So maintaining high fidelity of your underground assets in GIS is problematic, and that's something that we're interested in finding solutions for. But I'm curious if you guys are looking at improving your GIS model to be more integrated with complex underground modeling, so you're not manually updating or modifying those things.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of aspects of our underground assets that we're not currently doing in GIS that are a roadmap. And like you've heard from some of the people in here, is utility network and S/4HANA are both on our roadmap too. So a lot of those capabilities we're looking at to enhance with those projects. And this will be ahead of that, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, right now, the majority of the undergrounding we're doing is in our high fire threat areas, so out in the middle of nowhere. We're overhead to underground conversion. So, we're doing the UDH pole, but obviously 99% of it's going to be existing overhead, not underground. But that is something, we're trying to take into consideration is as we continue to install more underground, we're obviously going to need to tweak it with AUD in the future and all of that. But looking at utility network, which is on our near-term roadmap, and how those are going to blend together and move forward from there.
We have a question from the internet. Dalt from SCE said, besides Pat Reed, what do you think has been your biggest hurdle bringing AUD to the point of implementation, and how do you overcome it?
I like it. I would say one of the complexities has been on our EES side, right? Our costing tool that's an interface to SAP. We have our own logic that we wrote. We have our own CU system. So we have what we call DABs, Dynamic Assembly Builders, where it lumps together CUs and like function and all of that. I would say that was one of the more tricky ones to try and get through. And then also just even some of our own stuff that we've created. We have our own volt drop and flicker calculations, cable pulling. A lot of that has been in-house. SCE, I know you guys have in SDG&A, the same stipulations we do. We have so many safety factors and all of that built into it that we typically go way above and beyond and complicate the heck out of things. So I would say more or less it was our costing tool that was a little trickier.
And funding.
Funding's always an issue.
Funding's always.
Even for us.
Any other questions?
So my question is, how did you get your governance in place? I know you talked about it a little bit, but what would be like your biggest tips? Because we have that too, where some of our designs, when they're coming out of a central hub, are following standards, but then we're statewide, right? So we're Arizona statewide, and we see a lot of our rural offices kind of do whatever they want, whenever they want. They don't use our symbols. A lot of what you said resonated with us. So what's something that advice that you could give us to get that governance structure in place?
I will say I am typically pretty strategic about how I do things. So I started from the construction side and got their leadership and all of their feedback to say, hey, we are tired of seeing, one design looks this way, one design looks that way, and they could be, conjoining jobs. So I started from that and then kind of worked backwards from there and just went to the different lines of business and said, hey, to a mapper, if we gave you the same, job every time, is it that much quicker? And kind of went down that path and got all of the leaders from those different kind of dependency groups to buy off on it and then pushed from there.
It's not perfect. We still things going on where people still want to design and build their own way. We're still working through that.
And that's really why, thankfully my leadership also saw that from the design estimating side and put the QC in place. Because we knew that if we just rolled out a manual across 1,000 people, there's no way, right? It'd be great for a month and then someone's going to go, actually, I liked it this way. So that was part of the whole QC process, is just, all right, this stinks. We're adding one more layer and all of that, but it really does ensure. I mean, I CC'd on every one of the emails. It's awesome. But I get, kickbacks daily where it's, hey, you're not using this right line style, down to that of, maybe it was user error. They grabbed an old job or whatever, but really putting that kind of control in place is going to probably get phased out eventually, but it was the only way to get us caught back up to here's what we're going to do moving forward.
Have you rolled that quality control out to the AEC firms that are delivering your designs, or do you have to do a lot of cleanup?
So truthfully, it was a little bit easier with the AEC firms because historically they would go through and they'd put together a design and hand it over to one engineer to review, and same thing. They'd say, no, I want this way. I want this that way. So we actually got feedback from them of, if you give us one standardized template, one way to do things, it's easier on them. So we've had very good success with that. Like I said, internal, people still wanted to have their own way and their own opinion, and it's totally understandable. But we obviously have to get to one set process moving forward.
Yeah, even when it came to the CAD manual, I had some of my contractors emailing me when they even caught wind that we were doing it every single week, asking for an updated copy before we'd even published it, just so they had something to work off of. So yeah, they were actually very excited.